Hey guys, it's Cece, and today I am here to talk about all of the books that I got in the month of April. So, for the first time in, I want to say, years, the stack of books I purchased is larger than the stack of books I was sent. So, currently, the way that my TBR shelf looks is my fault, and not the fault of people sending me books. Not that I'm assigning blame, it's just that usually I control myself a little bit better, and this month I didn't, or last month I didn't. I bought a lot of books in April. I actually don't know how many things I'm talking about, I forgot to count, give me 1 second. So 24 books total, and this is the stack that was sent to me. So less. Yeah. So I think today I'm going to start by talking about the books that were sent to me, and then I'll talk about books that I purchased secondhand, and then I'll talk about books I purchased full price or pre-ordered. I think that's how we're going to arrange this. And yes, I have a lot of band-aids on my fingers. There was a run-in with a cat. This is what happened. Anyway, let's talk about books I was sent. I have one book that was sent to me as a birthday gift, and the rest were sent by publishers. So, let's jump in. So the first book I'm going to talk about was a birthday gift. It just got here a couple of days into April, and that is Water Runs Red by Jenna Clare. This was sent to me by the lovely Ashley of the channel Tea Leaves and Bookbindings. You should definitely go watch her channel as well as Jenna's channel. I just talked about this book in my April wrap-up part 2, if you want to know more about it. But this is a poetry collection about toxic friendship, friendships ending, asexuality, political uprising. There's a lot here. It's a really beautiful poetry collection that I adored. So if you want to hear my in-depth thoughts, April wrap-up part 2, but I'm so glad that Ashley sent this to me for my birthday off of my Amazon wishlist because I really wanted to read Jenna's book, and now I get to take this with me and hopefully have Jenna sign it during, BookCon and stuff, which is going to be really fun. Next, I'm going to talk about a couple of books that were sent to me in subscription boxes in April. So the first one is Sky Without Stars by Jessica Brody and Joanne Rendell. I actually already had this book in ARC format, but I didn't get to it before the book was released. So this came in the April Unplugged book box, which is a book box I open every month on my channel. It's a book box about books and self-care, and they sent this book as the April pick. And the thing that I know about this book is that it is basically Les Mis in space. Like, it takes inspiration from Les Mis, but it's set in space. And it's a chunky book. It is hefty. It's got a solid page count going. And it has a pretty cool cover. Oh, and so apparently different editions of this book came with different embossed things on the front. So I got the one that has a lock. Apparently there is another version as well. So that is Sky Without Stars. Still very interested in reading this, just don't know when to get to it because it's a big old book. I also have 2 copies of Wicked Saints by Emily A. Duncan. So, Wicked Saints was sent to me in the April Owlcrate box. This is the Owlcrate exclusive edition, but the publisher also sent me a copy. So this is the regular edition of Wicked Saints. And truly, the benefit of this is that you get to see what they look like side by side, there you go. There are the differences. They're beautiful. I'll also show you the front where it says, "Let them fear her," which is pretty fantastic. And the end pages are also gorgeous. I'll show you. Look at that. Beautiful. So Wicked Saints is a YA fantasy book. It was released at the beginning of April, and it is set during a centuries-long war, and it is about 3 people who hopefully have the ability to put a stop to this war. There's a girl who hears the voices of gods in her head, a prince, surrounded by desperate suitors and deadly assassins, apparently, and then there's a monster, and all of their paths are going to become intertwined. And I also know that this has a couple of queer side characters, which is super exciting, and I know it is, bloody as hell. So, now I definitely know I'll get to this book since I have 2 copies of it. So thank you very much to Owlcrate for the Owlcrate exclusive edition, and to Wednesday Books for this, full edition, this full standard edition. I'm excited. So when Macmillan reached out to me about sending me a finished copy of Wicked Saints, I was like, yes, absolutely. And I thought that that's all they were sending me, but they included a special surprise that I did not know was arriving, and I'm so excited because it's one of my most anticipated releases of the year. They also sent along Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This is a male-male romance between the son of a sitting president and the Prince of Wales. And everyone loves this book. Everyone says it's hysterical and heartwarming and lovely. I have been anticipating it so highly. This is a new adult romance also, which is cool. And I follow Casey on Twitter, and they're the best. So, I'm dying to read this book. I'm definitely reading it in June as part of my Pride TBR, and this was the best surprise to find inside of a package for a book I was already really pumped about. I was so unprepared for this. I have 2 more arcs, and both were sent to me unsolicited, but both I'm actually pretty interested in reading. The first is A Sorcery of Thorns, or just Sorcery of Thorns. That was my Sarah J. Maas period of my life coming back. This is by Margaret Rogerson. I didn't know anything about this book when it was sent to me. I had seen the cover and figured it looked like a book I wasn't particularly interested in reading, but when it arrived on my doorstep, I did some actual reading about it, and it sounds kind of interesting. The first line on the back of this is, "All sorcerers are evil," which is interesting, and it is about a girl named Elizabeth who was raised in the Great Library, and when the library is sabotaged, she is accused of treason. So, I like books set in libraries, I like books about bookish characters, and I like books about sorcery. So, I'm sorry I judged this book for its cover. It sounds super interesting, honestly. And this is being released, this may already be out. Yeah, as of seeing this, it's already out. This was supposed to be released on May 14th, so it's out in the world now. You can get your own copy. And the last arc that I have is one that I think a lot of people were anticipating, and I had heard about it, but I didn't know much about it. Now I'm super interested in reading it. It is Frankly in Love by David Yoon. This is a YA contemporary. This is about a boy named Frank Lee who is Korean, and his parents immigrated to America, and they have a lot of expectations for him, and those expectations do not include him dating a white girl, and he currently is. So, to sort of save face with them, he turns to a family friend named Joy, who is in a similar situation with her parents, and I believe this has fake dating. I think that's what this is about. A lot of people are super excited about this book. As soon as I read the description, I knew I was interested, plus this came in, the most adorable mailing package I've ever received. I absolutely loved it. So, that is this book, which I'm definitely going to read. And this is being released in September. What day in September? Great question. It comes out in September. That's the point. I'm excited about it. Okay, I have a lot more books to get through. Everything from here on out, books that I purchased with my own money. That's what I'll be talking about. So, I'm going to talk about 2 books I got at a thrift store, and then I'm going to talk about a bunch of books I got at a library book sale. So let's do thrift store first. I got 2 books from the thrift store. The first is The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. I have read this book a couple of times. I read it in high school. I read it again in college. And I wound up getting rid of my copy when I left college because I was moving in with someone who had a copy. So I figured I didn't need to keep the borrowed copy from school. So when I saw this, it was like $1 at the thrift store. I grabbed it. This is a book, it's a series of vignettes about a young Latina girl growing up in Chicago, and it deals with some pretty intense topics, but this is like a celebrated classic. That's why I've read it in multiple English classes at multiple points in my life, and I really wanted my own copy. And then I also grabbed My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry by Frederik Backman. I've never read anything by Frederik Backman before, but I have a bunch of his books on my Goodreads TBR, so this was like $2 at the thrift store. I grabbed it. I know nothing about it besides the fact that it's about Frederik Backman. I know nothing about it besides the fact that it is by Frederik Backman, and I really want to, get into his work. So, grabbed this. I also love the cover. I think it's really lovely. I love all of Frederik Backman's covers, though. I think that they're all really beautiful. Next up, I have 7 books that I purchased at a library book sale. The Salt Lake Library had a big book sale. I went. Books were cheap. I bought a lot of them. So first I have a few paperbacks. I have Rubyfruit Jungle by Rita Mae Brown. I read my ex-girlfriend's copy of this, really liked it, and I wanted my own copy. Now that I can't have hers to reread. This is a pretty classic piece of lesbian fiction that was written in the 1970s. If you are at all interested in reading classic lesbian lit, through history. This is a pretty great one. I really enjoyed it. And basically this is about a girl named Molly Bolt who was born a bastard and is adopted by a dirt poor southern couple. So that is what this is. I really enjoyed it. I think it's a great piece of history for queer women. I also grabbed Five Little Pigs by Agatha Christie. I know nothing about this besides it is a Poirot mystery, and I love Agatha Christie, and in particular, I love Poirot. I have been trying to collect, like, a specific edition of all of Agatha Christie's books, but more and more I've determined that that's just not me. I'm not the type of person who hunts down particular editions of different books, so I'm just gonna grab Agatha Christie when I find books by her. So I grabbed this. I'm sure it's going to be interesting and twisty and fun. And the last paperback I grabbed was Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse, which was one of my most anticipated 2018 releases, and I've been really excited about the sequel that's coming out this year. I am currently reading this book. I'm only a little bit in, and I wound up actually having to, like, take a break. Like, I was having a really hard time getting into the beginning of this book, so I'm reading a couple of other books and then circling back to this. But this is an Own Voices book with a native main character, and this is set sort of after an apocalypse where waters rose, it wiped out a lot of the world, and with that, a bunch of monsters of old Navajo legend have also risen up. So Maggie, the main character, is a monster hunter. She's just sort of built for hunting monsters. That's kind of all I've read of this book so far, is just that basic summary, so I don't have a lot more to share right now, but it does have, like, a really interesting setting and a really interesting setup. I think that I just wasn't quite in the right mood to read this when I picked it up originally, and I'll be looping back soon to finish it. I also have 5 hardcover books that I purchased at the library book sale. Most of these I don't know that much about. I just know that I want to read them. So I've got I Crawl Through It by A.S. King. I only bought this because I like A.S. King. I read her book, Ask the Passengers. Haven't read anything by her since. Now I own this and Still Life with Tornado, so at some point I'm gonna have to get through more of her books. Mostly I just know that she writes weird stuff. So, interested in this. I also have Wonders of the Invisible World by Christopher Barzak. The only thing I know about this is that it's gay. Shocking, right? Honestly, the description of this book is sort of weird and vague. It feels like it has sort of a fabulist twist or some kind of speculative element, that it is about a boy trying to figure out himself and what's going on, but he's also being plagued with dreams of mysterious fairy tale worlds, dreams of his ancestors. So, I don't know. This has won a few awards for being a really excellent work of fiction, particularly gay fiction, so I grabbed it when I saw it. I also have The 5 Stages of Andrew Brawley by Shaun David Hutchinson. I own so many Shaun David Hutchinson books now, and I've only read a couple, so I really need to get some more Shaun David Hutchinson. Again, this will probably be on my TBR for Pride. This is about a boy named Andrew Brawley who ends up in the psych ward of a hospital and starts, like, falling for another boy there. I believe he's in the psych ward because he is the only survivor of some kind of accident that killed the rest of his family. So I'm interested in this. Like I said, I own a lot of Shaun David Hutchinson. He's kind of like an author I buy books now when I see his name, even though I only have liked one of his books that I've read so far. I feel like I'm on the chase for another one of his books I'm really gonna love, and this was one of his earliest, like, works. So I'm curious to see where he got his start. And then maybe I can read this and his newest one. That'd be great, back to back. Then I have 2 books I actually know a fair bit about. We have As I Descended by Robin Talley. I know. Here I am giving Robin Talley another chance. Probably not a good idea, but I was interested in this book for too long, and it has too many elements I like for me to just ignore reading it. This is a retelling of Macbeth set at an all-girls boarding school, and it's super, super gay. Gay retellings are a fave of mine, as are retellings of Shakespeare, so I've heard, like, a lot of bad things about this book, and I've heard a few good reviews. I have not had a great experience with Robin Talley's books that I've read thus far, but maybe this will be the one to break the trend. And the last book I grabbed at the library book sale is Echo After Echo by Amy Rose Capetta. I'm actually, like, kind of in the middle of reading this. I started reading it in November of last year, I want to say. Maybe even October, because I had an e-arc of it. I was sent an e-arc before the book was published. I believe this was published in 2017, if you want a picture of how my e-arcs are going. Yup, 2017. But this book is a female-female romance, a YA contemporary, and it's also a mystery set on a haunted Broadway stage. I have only read one other book by Amy Rose Capetta, that's The Brilliant Death, which is her fantasy book, and I think that she brings the same really lovely lyrical writing to fantasy that she does to her contemporary. I was really loving this when I was reading it, I just have a hard time reading ebooks. So, now that I have a physical copy, hopefully I'll actually finish this soon. I have hair in my eye. It needs to stop. I was very excited to grab this. And that's the end of my stuff from the library. So now I can talk about books I purchased at Barnes & Noble and the 2 books that I pre-ordered. I just said Barnes & Noble. I have one book that I didn't get at Barnes & Noble, and that's Educated by Tara Westover. This is a memoir. I grabbed it at Costco when I was leaving Costco after a long day of shopping for food, because it was there and I was interested. I've heard a lot of really incredible things about this book. This is a memoir about a girl who grew up on like a survivalist compound in, I want to say, Idaho? Am I making that up? Idaho, yeah! So her parents really rejected the idea of modern medicine. She was cut off from the world. So the first time she entered a public school was when she was 17 years old. I've been really interested in this. So when I saw it at Costco, I was like, you know, I've already spent this much on food. Might as well throw in a book. Now stuff that I purchased at Barnes & Noble. I have 3 trade paperbacks, all of which I have since read. So, that's good. I have Scooby Apocalypse Volume 1. This is by Keith Giffen, J.M. DeMetteis, and Howard Porter. This is, like, AU fanfic, kind of, about the Scooby Gang if they met during the apocalypse that possibly Velma had a hand in causing. It had a great art style, and it hated women. I don't know if I'm keeping this, but I bought it. I also bought, at the same time, Steel Prince Volume 1 by V.E. Schwab, with art by Andrea Angiolini. This is a prequel comic series set in the world of these Shades of Magic about Maxim, who is the king in Shades of Magic. In this, he is a prince. This had a really, really fascinating story, one that I'm invested in, but the art style kind of made it difficult to follow. It's kind of illegible. So like, good and bad with this. Yes, I spent money on these 2 things that I don't even know if I'm gonna keep, but if you want to hear more detailed thoughts about either of those, go check out my April Part 2 wrap-up. I talk about both of them in there. And then the last one I have is Heavy Vinyl, Volume 1 by Carly Usdin, with art by, I've forgotten this person's name every single time, Nina Vaqueva. This is a comic series set in the 90s. About a girl who starts working at a record store. So it's got like a very Empire Records vibe to it, but the main character's a lesbian who has a crush on another one of the girls who works at the record store, but then it also turns into like a girl gang vigilante fight club. It's delightful. I read this book at the beginning of May, and I absolutely obsessed with it. Sadly, it seems like this was a limited run comic, so this is the only volume we're ever going to get. I would love to read more stories set in this world, but it's absolutely fantastic. I loved it. It has one of my favorite female-female romances I've ever read in a graphic novel or comic format. Like, this is up there with Lumberjanes for me in terms of queer girl comics, so highly recommend. And the last thing I grabbed at Barnes & Noble was a full novel, and that is The House of Impossible Beauties by Joseph Quesada, which people have been telling me to read. I have been incredibly interested in it. Like, it sounds so incredibly up my alley. It's ridiculous. This is a book set in New York City in the 1980s, and it's about the Harlem Ball scene, and it is specifically sort of a fictionalized account of the House of Extravaganza, which was the first house that was an entirely Latinx house. I'm really interested in this. I recently just finally watched the documentary Paris is Burning. I know, I can't believe that I'm a gay who'd never seen Paris is Burning, but I watched it in preparation for reading this because it covers a lot of, like, the basic information you need and interviews a lot of the people who are going to appear in a book like this. So it's taking inspiration from the House of Extravaganza. It is also obviously covering sort of the AIDS epidemic that was happening at the time, how the people of the ball scene lived, the ball scene which was made up mostly of trans women but also gay men, and I'm super, super excited to read it. This is yet another book I probably will be reading during Pride. You're seeing a lot of my TBR right now. Okay, I have 2 books left, and they are both pre-orders. They are both books that came out in April that I pre-ordered and arrived here in April. The first is When We Left Cuba. This is by Chanel Clayton, and it is the companion novel to Next Year in Havana, which is a book I read at the end of 2018. Really, really liked it. That first book is a romance, like, set in 2 different time periods, but also, like, a fascinating account of Cuba, the Cuban Revolution. It was just, like, really, really fascinating. I learned a lot and also loved the romances that I was given, and this is a companion novel, and it is about a woman who appeared, like, on the sidelines of both of the original narratives. It's about a character named Beatrice, who was the most fascinating and in-the-dark character in that first book that I'm fascinated to learn more about, because she seemed like she was up to some shit, and I am dying to find out what it was. Very, very happy when this arrived. Can't wait to read it. And the final book for this haul is The Luminous Dead by Caitlin Starling. This is horror. It's also speculative fiction. This is supposed to be, like, deeply fucked up, about queer girls. I don't know how else to say that is, particularly up my alley. But it is about a woman who gets to go on an expedition on a far-off planet, and she thinks that she's just gonna be doing, like, normal experiments when she gets there, and instead she has an expedition leader named M, who has no problem controlling her body with substances. It sounds horrifying and weird as hell, and as soon as I heard about this book, pre-ordered it. So, I don't know when I'm gonna read it. I would love to read it in June, but, I mean, June's gonna be pretty packed with reading as it is, so who knows? I'm sure that this is going to leave me feeling disturbed, but also something that I'm going to absolutely love. People have been telling me I'm going to love this book, and I believe all of them. But with that, we are done talking about the books that I acquired in the month of April. What did you think of this stack of books? I bought a lot, but I feel like I'm excited about a lot of them, and that maybe makes up for it. For the ones that I haven't read yet, which books should I prioritize? Have you rated any of them really highly? Have you rated any of them really poorly? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!